So welcome everybody to the European City Network's series of webinars. We're on the fourth webinar here, which is the Cities Learn format. Just to give you a little bit of a background, about the European Capital of Democracy. We are a non-profit organization, which is part of the Innovation in Politics Institute, a European-wide organization dedicated to improving politics with offices in Vienna and in Berlin, and partners across Europe and beyond. So today it's the Cities Learn format, and we will talk about citizens' assemblies, how and why. This webinar is hosted by the City of Brussels with guest speakers Dimitri Lemaire and Louise Humblet from Particitiz. So after this brief introduction to the series of webinars, we will begin with the presentations. And then at roughly 35 minutes past 3, we will begin the Q&A, where you can write in the chat and we can have a bit of a discussion about the presentation. And at the end, we will have a short summary and outlook for the rest of the webinar series. So without further ado, I will like to hand over to Dimitri Lemaire and Louise Humblet to begin their presentations.
So, citizen assemblies, how and why? So, just a quick story. I organized my first citizen assembly at the European Parliament in 2011, and it was a life-changing experience. Having people that had never entered the parliament, because we got them by lot, by sortition, entered this parliament and were able for 3 days to sit down and talk about the future of their society, or in this case, it was about the economical crisis, was just incredible, because these people really felt that they were part of something. So this is why a few years after my European Parliament experience, I created Particitiz. So why should you organize a citizen assembly? There's loads of reasons why you should do that. First of all, when you organize a citizen assembly, and this is why I started my presentation, is that if you've never done it and you finally do it, the most incredible moment would be when these people that you randomly selected or not, but these people arrive at your assembly the first day. They just don't know what's going to happen to them. They've said, okay, I'll come to the citizens assembly, but I don't really know what's going to happen, because all these people, if you select them properly through, and Louise will talk about that a little bit later, if you select them by mostly random selection, you're going to get people that never imagined that one day they would be asked to come and discuss with other fellow citizens and experts about a global thematic, about their society, about tomorrow, basically. And also there will be sort of, okay, I'm part of this game, I have my voice. And so we in these assemblies, we really get, and that's what we see with Louise, to include people that don't usually participate. And that is something that, as I told you at the beginning, something that touched me the most at the first time. I just said, wow, I was working in the parliament for years now, and just of a sudden, these people coming in were people that I had never, the kind of people that I had never seen in the parliament. And that really changes, and the conversations and the debates that you have with a more diversified group changes profoundly. Another way of organizing an assembly is because politicians, they get their information from their political party, from their political advisors, from the organized civil society, from the lobbies, from academic reports, etc., but very seldomly from a diverse group of citizens that can directly think and say, okay, we as a diverse group of citizens, this is what we think. And I find that that's really interesting. It's a new channel, it's a new way of feeding the political sphere, the political arena. And I think that we've seen with time, I've been doing that now for 15 years, it really can enlighten not only politicians, but also administrations. And administrations, this is the next point, a breath of fresh air for civil servants. What I've noticed too in these 15 years is that I had so many times we started a project of a citizen assembly in a parliament, in a ministry, etc. that had never done it before. And I was confronted at the first meeting to civil servants who were looking at me and saying, oh my God, what is this citizen assembly with random selected people? And basically not one, can I remember, that's at the end of the process said, oh, this was a horrible experience. Actually, all the country, they all loved it, and most of them became passionate about citizens' participation and getting citizens into their administration and listening to citizens in a kind of organized way through facilitation, through table conversations and things like this. Next slide, maybe, Louise. So why not to organize citizen assemblies? There are so many reasons not to organize them too, as many as why to organize them. It's really terrible to organize a citizen assembly if the subject you're going to talk about is not on the political agenda. So if you're going to talk about something where your political sphere and arena is not going to be deciding about it in the near future, it's got no use. And it's going to frustrate the citizens because you're going to come out, they're going to work, they're going to think, they're going to debate, and they're going to come out with recommendations which won't really matter because it's not on the political agenda, because it won't be spoken about in the near future. So that linking your citizen assembly to your political agenda is really important. Another thing is if the issue is only or mainly technical. I believe that citizens' assemblies can be on any subject, really any subject. But what you've got to be careful about is not to have, if you talk about 5G or nuclear power, if you're going to go only into the technical matter, you're going to lose a lot of people. A lot of people are going to find it far too technical. So if, let's say about nuclear power, do we continue building nuclear power stations or not? It's more about that question. It's not about the technical issue. So you've got to be really careful not to go too much into the technical aspects of certain subjects. Another reason why not to do it is when everything's decided. So we've seen citizens' assemblies where the politicians have already decided what they want, and they do a citizens' assembly. For example, I'll give you an example on mobility. We can decide the big lines of mobility, and then we ask people to ask them if that road has got to be on one way or double way, things like this. This is not enough room for maneuver. It's not enough deliberative space. You need to give your assembly enough space for deliberation and decision. And if it's too short, too narrow, too technical, you will lose also everybody, and it's a bit of a participant washing. And we've seen that a lot in the hundreds of citizen assemblies that we've observed in Europe recently. It's the second of our pop-up here. And then finally, a lot of people think that citizens assemblies are going to come out with out-of-the-box ideas, new ideas. It is political innovation, but you won't get out of a citizen assembly ideas that are totally new or totally crazy. Why? Because we tend, and this is a characteristic of citizen assemblies, we tend to go towards the consensus, and so there's a certain sense of common sense that comes in. So these crazy, it's very, very rare to get crazy ideas that come out and that are supported by the rest, but by the whole of the citizens' assembly. So don't organize a citizen assembly if you want to have out of the box ideas, you won't get them, and it's very seldom that you do that. Next slide. Well, next slide is Louise's slide, so I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, Dimitri. Thank you. So I'll go quickly over the 5 steps on how to organize a citizens' assembly. We don't have a lot of time, so I won't go very much into detail, but don't hesitate to afterwards, if you have some specific questions about some of the steps, to ask them in the chat, and I'll be happy to go in on certain aspects a bit further. First step, and Dimitri already discussed this about a political agenda. We need a genuine political support and will to organize a citizens' assembly. This is, of course, in the case of a citizens' assembly, that the mandate comes from city council, for example. So it's not a bottom-up citizen assembly, but if it's a top-down citizen assembly where city council gives a mandate to a citizen assembly, it's important that city council supports the idea of a citizen assembly, and more importantly, that it will follow up on the outcome of that assembly. This is crucial. If you don't have the support at the beginning, then in no way there will be follow-up or qualitative follow-up afterwards. They will just put it to the side. So the first one and it's a very important one, a very difficult one. Often is to find that political will, and we've given you some arguments on why and why not to organize an assembly, so you can use those in convincing political power. Second one, once we have the support of the political sphere to organize a citizen assembly, is of course choosing the subject. This is something that's very important again, because as Dimitri said, we can organize citizen assemblies on a number of subjects, but it is key to define a subject in that way that, as Dimitri already said, that there is enough deliberation space, that there is a decision to be made, and that city council will be open to recommendations that come out of it. The question cannot be too technical. The question, for example, and that's also a difference with a referendum, the question cannot be a yes or no question. We never ask to a group of citizens, do you agree or not agree? That's for other, I would say, forms of citizen participation or politics, but in the topics for a citizen assembly should always be a question, and should be a question where there is enough room, where there is political will to answer and to follow up on results, and that is not too technical. You can do the agenda setting phase 2 ways. Either city council or the parliament or something, or the institute behind the citizen assembly decides on the topic. That can be, for example, a topic where there is no political agreement and they want to ask the citizens for input to give new fresh air, as we already said to a debate. So that would be then a top-down proposal. But we could also have, and that we see a lot, also the bottom-up. For example, in Brussels, we have in the parliament the possibility to organize committees, mixed committees, so that's the citizen assembly within the parliament. And there it is possible for that the topic is chosen through what they call a citizen's suggestion. And so a suggestion for a question should have 1,000 signatures. It's a bit like a petition, 1,000 signatures, and then it comes to the agenda of the Bureau of the Parliament that decides on whether or not to organize a citizen assembly. That will be then a bottom-up from organized civil society, that force that tries to gain as much signatures as necessary to put something on the agenda of a citizen assembly. Once we have the will and the agenda, expertise and scientific follow-up are very important, but very different. Let me start with scientific follow-up. It is it's very common, and it happens a lot, that citizens' assemblies are followed up by a scientific committee. consisting of mostly academics or practitioners in the field that observe the citizen assembly, that accompany the administration, the civil servants, and also the practitioners organizing the citizen assembly. They help them, they give input, and they assure a certain neutrality and a certain quality as well of facilitation of deliberation and of information given to the citizens. So setting up a scientific committee is something that we would recommend because it also is very important in terms of evaluation afterwards, and it gives an extra layer to your citizen assembly in terms of credibility. Transparency in a citizens' participation mechanism as is a citizens' assembly is also very important, and that's why why the scientific committee, for example, are also external people. It's not something that's like decided within the parliament between civil servants and 2 or 3 politicians, like let's do that and we'll invite these and these experts to speak. And so this transparency aspect of the citizen assembly is very important for the bigger population, but also for the participants themselves. And so again, that's a crucial role for the scientific committee. Another role for the scientific committee is deciding on which expertise goes to the citizens. Obviously, as we said, we can discuss many subjects within a citizens' assembly, but we are not all experts, or that's not the purpose of a citizen. Citizens do not have expertise in all fields, and so they will need to receive expertise. That can be from academics, can be from civil society organizations, whatever. But the scientific committee here plays a very important role because information is key, but information is also very touchy. And so again, assuring this credibility and this transparency in who is invited to the citizen assembly, what process, how is decided who comes to this citizen assembly to give input, to give information is crucial. And then also lastly, what is very important in terms of expertise, and this can be a role for the scientific committee, but mostly also for the practitioner or the facilitators organizing, is the accessibility of the information. So information should be given, but should also be accessible for people. So that means that we can invite experts, but maybe we should also give some written information. Everyone should have the same access to all information, and the information should be presented in a way that it's understood by everyone.
Louise, can I jump in quickly?
Go ahead.
So on expertise, actually, listening to Louise, something came up to me that I want to share with you. A citizens' assembly is not confronting, is mixing expertise, so experts on a given subject, for example, mobility, and life expertise, the citizens' life expertise on their own life. So a citizen that is not a citizen is not an expert of mobility, or maybe some are, but they are experts of their own mobility. And when you confront them and when you get them to discuss with experts of mobility, that's where magic happens. And this is where the citizens can really sort of bring in information to the experts, and the experts bring in information to the citizens. So this is a two-way thing. The expertise comes from the two poles, if you like. This is, I just wanted to add that.
Thanks, Dimitri. Once all of that is set up, we can start designing the citizens' assembly. I will highlight here 3 aspects of the design of a citizen assembly that are the recruitment, how do we select participants? I will go into the different phases of a citizen assembly, and lastly, say something about the follow-up of the results. Let's start with recruitment. As Dimitri already said, a common way of recruiting participants for a citizen assembly is by lot, or what we call by sortition. Sortition is a 3-step way of selecting citizens, where the first step is to randomly select from a register, national register, or posts or based on postal addresses, you select randomly a number of people that in most cases get a written letter. They receive a written letter in their mailbox at home saying, congratulations, you're selected to maybe participate in a citizen assembly. The citizen assembly is organized by the city council. It will discuss, let's say, mobility. This is the question that we will ask. And also it has all kinds of very important practical information on what's expected from participants, dates, is there a remuneration, do they get money to participate or not, and stuff like that. So we'll send out, for example, in Brussels, we send out 10,000 of these letters. When people are interested to participate, they need to register. So they voluntarily say, oh, this is something that I find interesting. I want to participate. And then they have to register. It's mostly online, but there should always be an offline possibility, obviously, as well, to register. That process is a number of questions people go through, and they answer questions about themselves: gender, their age, level of education, what they do for a living, and maybe also where they live in terms of the geographical information about a city or a region, for example. So they'll answer all of these questions, and they share contact information. And then the crucial part is where the magic of sortition happens. There is a second selection that happens within those volunteers, where we take into account the statistic or the statistical diversity of a given, for example, in this case, a city. So for example, if 20% of the people of your city is retired, then 20% of your citizen assembly should be people that are retired as well. And then you have same thing with ages. So if we have 15% that's between 16 and 25 within the population, then we should have 15% of the citizens assembly that is between 16 and 25. This allows us to have a group of citizens that is not necessarily representative, because often the number of participants in the citizen assembly is way too small. For example, in Brussels, over 1 million people, and in our citizen assembly, we have only 45 people there. So it's difficult to talk about representation. But what we do have is that the diversity of the city of Brussels, in this case, is reflected in the diversity of the citizen assembly. This is a process that we commonly do, but it also has its limits. And so that's why we are now experimenting with combining this way of selecting, so sortition, with, for example, with, for example, door-to-door recruitment as well, or random digital dialing, where we call up random phone numbers. In terms of number of participants, this is a question we get a lot. How many people should be in my citizen assembly? There is not really a religion about this. It depends on a lot of factors. It can be on the size of your city, but as well on budget that you have, the space that is available. So that's all factors that we should take into account. And then whether it's mixed or not, that we have some examples where, for example, it's not only citizen assembly, but we can combine them with elected officials, elected politicians, or maybe a mix between citizens and civil servants. All of that is already happening. I'm going a little bit faster because I see time is running out. In terms of the phases of a citizen assembly, the number of days we always say, and the OECD also says this, it's a minimum of 3 days, because there are 3 phases. But in reality, most of the citizen assemblies we do is more like 3 weekends. So the more time you have, the better, to go more into depth into a process and give time to citizens to really deliberate. 3 phases of a citizen assembly are, first of all, information. You already talked about this. This is the expertise that is given to the citizens and information that they get on the topic. Then there is a big moment in time, a lot of time to deliberation, because obviously this is the added value of a citizens assembly. People discuss between them, they exchange points of view, and they get ideas from others, and they form the added value is in the discussion between citizens, obviously. So there is the deliberation phase. And then at the end, we have what we call the recommendation phase, where the group of citizens comes to a final result. They formulate recommendations on the given topic. In terms of follow-up, after all the work is done by the citizens or by the participants, the follow-up obviously is something that is very important to give credibility to the project. Otherwise, people will have spent often a lot of time, a lot of free time during weekends. And so it's important to give them a qualitative follow-up. They recommend that in this follow-up, citizens are included, not only by communication, so they should be kept up to date on what is happening with their recommendations, but sometimes we also see that citizens really can contribute into the follow-up and putting into place some recommendations. Time is of the essence here, and time is something that's very political in the sense that some decisions just take time. Politics is very slow. In Brussels, we had a citizen assembly on mobility in 2017 that feeded the civil servants to write up a new mobility plan for the whole region. And the mobility plan was only finished and implemented in 2022. So that's more than 5 years between the citizens assembly and the actual plan. But it's also the time it takes to write up for civil servants to write this whole thing up. So that's something that should be taken into account and should be communicated about very openly to participants. And then lastly, civil servants obviously play a crucial role in here. And what we want to put into your attention there is that we see a lot of the times that for organizing a citizen assembly and for the recruitment of participants and organizing it, coordinating it, there are civil servants who are now within their administration the point of contact for doing that. It's their job. They, with practitioners, organize contact participants and stuff like that. But we also should take into account that we need civil servants to do the follow-up, because this is something that takes a lot of working hours also to see if that recommendation is sent to that administration, that recommendation is sent to that administration, be in contact with them, see if everything is clear, and be able to go back to citizens saying, I did already this and this and this is still in my pipeline. So this is more of a point of attention that the work of a civil servant accompanying a citizen assembly does not stop at the end of the assembly. There is a whole follow-up phase afterwards that should be taken into account as well. And then lastly, the evaluation. Evaluation is crucial for, obviously, again, for the credibility of the process. It's something that academics ask a lot, to have feedback on how a citizen assembly went. But also this is very important for administration and civil servants again, because if you want to organize more, then it's always good to be able to build on the last one. For example, what we did in the Brussels Parliament, we had 6 of the mixed committees, and there is a huge difference between what we did at the first one and what we did at the last one. And that was all based on evaluation from academics, meaning in terms of expertise, we changed some things in terms of the question and stuff like that, but also from citizens. How did they experience participating in this citizen assembly? What was difficult, what was not difficult, what was good, what was less good, and then always adapt. It's very valuable if we want to keep organizing them in better and better way. So those were the 5 steps of how to organize a citizen assembly. And then for some closing thoughts, I'll give the floor to Dimitri again. You're muted, Dimitri, so you should unmute yourself.
Sorry, thanks, Louise. Thanks, Louise, for that that information and presentation. So very rapidly, I know we're running out of time. What's the future of these citizens' assemblies? What we can notice here, and we've been doing this for now quite some while, there is a panel fatigue. In some countries, like in Belgium, like in England, where there's been a lot of panels, we see people saying, okay, but why do this? I mean, what's the result? We can't see the results yet, etc., etc. So there is a panel fatigue that we sense, us as organizers and experts, little by little coming up. Why? Most probably, and we really think this is because the follow-up is not designed thoroughly still. So we really design the panel and everybody gets into it and okay, we're going to do a panel, but then the follow-up, the after panel is often non-existent or very poor, and that is really a problem. Also, a panel is, if you have 30 people or even 150 as the European Commission does, it is very difficult to link it with what we call the maxi public. I don't really like that word, but the rest of the population, that is a problem. And this is something that we have to continue, experts and academics develop. How can we better link a citizens panel to the rest of the population that wants to participate? And finally, the communication. Maybe a lot of you have heard about the Oost-Belgian example and here in Belgium, but it's something that is on paper great, and I think that people that participate in it really bring something new, but a lot of people don't even know in that region of Belgium that that mechanism exists. So communication is key, and communication should really be part of your when you design your panel, thought about, okay, how do we do this? So what are our answers? Louise and I, we were thinking, okay, how can we tackle this panel fatigue, this lack of follow-up, etc., etc. First of all, we need a panel is one mechanism, and it needs to be integrated into a whole participative ecosystem, a journey. And it's got to be linked to other mechanisms. I'll give you an example of the European Commission for the moment. The European Commission has got mainly 2 big participatory mechanisms. The ECI, so the European Citizens Initiative, that makes people, so if you get 1 million signatures from 7 different countries, the subject is put to the agenda of the Commission. So there, you've got people that between 3 seconds and 2 debate because they sign. Do you think we should better treat our animals in Europe? And so people sign. So there, the reflection time is very poor. They sign, but if we've got 1 million signatures, then the Commission has got to take that subject and talk about it and come up with some answer. On the other hand, they have citizens panels, which we've been speaking about now, which bring 150 people for 3 weekends in Brussels, sometimes 2 weekends in Brussels and 1 online. But they're taken, they have to travel on Thursday, they get there on Thursday night or Friday morning, they've got to stay the whole weekend and fly back or take their train back on Sunday night or morning. So the commitment for 3 weekends is huge. So you see that there's a big gap between people that sign and then take 3 weekends to come and participate. So we need to have something between. We need to think these panels connected to other mechanisms. We also need a clear mandate when you tell citizens to come and participate. What we observe with Louise is that often it is not clear what's going to be done with the recommendations. And finally, the communication has got to be improved. I talked about it a little bit earlier. So now I think it's time for your questions.
So I just wanted to give a very quick overview of where we are in this series of webinars. This is webinar number 4, and you can see that we have plenty more coming up for the rest of 2024 and also at the beginning of 2025. So in June, the City of Antwerp will host a Cities Teach webinar on youth participation. They will also have the same topic in July in the Cities Learn format. We also have our open topic webinar in July. So at the end of my short presentation, you can put your thoughts in as to what subjects you would like to see, what topics you would like to see at this webinar in July. Also in September, we have an open topic. This is the ECOD City Network. We are now 21 cities from across 13 European countries. And as most of you know, Barcelona is currently the European Capital of Democracy, and Vienna will take over the title in November later this year. So this series of webinars is part of the Network of Towns project. Antwerp, Barcelona, Bologna, Braga, Cascais, and Brussels have come together to create this series of webinars, which is co-funded by the European Union.